motor mounts and then your cab mount bushings. Mine's got a little bit. You can see how that's kind of damp. Maybe somebody out there can learn from my mistakes. The first truck I bought, it ended up costing me, I've mentioned in another video, it cost me about $30,000. That was just on the truck itself. I don't know exactly how much it cost, but it was closer to $100,000 because I ended up driving another guy's truck for him for 10 months until I got back to even. I'm going to cover major red flags, kind of things that would be deal breakers for me, and reasons that I would not buy a truck if I found it when I was looking things over or test driving it. Probably before that, I'll go over wear items, certain fluid leaks and stuff to check on, just to be aware of, and they could be negotiating points. You know, you might be able to get them to drop price a little bit. And I will start with just really small things to check on that a lot of people, it's easy to forget. Steps to take before you ever go look at a truck. First of all, you need to figure out what kind of truck to buy. One of the mistakes I made when I bought this truck is buying the wrong truck for the application. I ended up switching, so now I'm using it for the correct application, but it's a long hood Peterbilt 379, and before I bought this truck, I was pulling a dry van. And after I bought it, I continued to pull a dry van for a little over a year, and my fuel mileage was terrible. On a regular basis, I got under 5 miles per gallon, sometimes close to 4. And as soon as I switched I started pulling a step deck, my fuel mileage went up a lot. So I can occasionally I'll get under 5, but that's normally if I'm pulling something tall or heavy, you know, or just climbing a lot of hills and stuff. But I can get up, 8-9 miles per gallon in good conditions with a tailwind. If you're pulling a dry van or a reefer, I would suggest, if you want good fuel mileage, I mean, if you got all the money in the world and you're not worried about expenses, then do whatever the heck you want. But you'll get better fuel mileage. You'll save a lot of money if you get one of the full stand-up sleepers. The next thing I would look at is what type of engine. Truck that cost me all the money was a Freightliner. It had a Detroit DD15. During that 10 months when I was driving the other guy's truck, I spent a lot of time researching engines, and I looked at, there's a guy named Josh. He has a channel called the Adept 8. He's a Caterpillar mechanic. Even if you don't want a Caterpillar engine, his channel's a good resource. Or other mechanics channels, if you're trying to decide which engine to get. I'll put a link in the description. If you're gonna run emissions like a newer truck, I would probably get something that's under warranty. Those trucks can cause, even if it's under warranty, I mean, your repairs and the problems that happen with these trucks, they cost you both money and time. So even if the dealership's gonna cover the cost of the repairs, they're not going to cover your time. So be aware of that. I would not run any new equipment that hasn't been deleted. I wouldn't do it. But there are some business models where if you want to take advantage of depreciation of the equipment, and always, like, if you buy a truck new, you run it till the warranty's out and then you trade it in. So there's tax advantages of running an operation like that. It kind of sets you up to where you always will just have to continue to work. I prefer to take more time off and avoid taxes by not working. I'd probably have 2, 3, or 4 trucks that you're interested in, and don't limit yourself to the radius right around where you live. Look nationwide at trucks, and then if you find a truck you really like in a certain area, maybe look at a certain radius around that area and try to find, at least have one other truck. I wouldn't drive halfway across the country just to look at a single truck. First of all, you might find a problem with the truck you go to look at, but also the other trucks you're looking at, that gives you negotiating power with whoever you end up buying the truck from. So it's always good to have more options available to you. You don't want to be desperate going in and that's the only truck you had planned on. Before I ever left the house to go look at a truck, I would run a rig dig report. It's kind of like a Carfax for semi trucks, So that'll tell you the accident history. And I think all you need is the VIN to look that up. But I would do a rig dig on every truck before you go look at it. It'll give you like the title and accident history. Things to take with you, I'd bring a set of mechanics gloves, or maybe just several pairs of those like disposable mechanics gloves, just so you put your hands on things and not have to spend too much time cleaning your hands off. I'd bring that. And this truck, I'll go open the hood real quick. I'll show you one other thing I bring with me. I know you probably couldn't hear anything I was saying, but these little eyedroppers, if you look at my coolant reservoir up there, it's solid. A lot of the newer trucks, they'll have like a clear plastic surge tank or coolant reservoir so you can see through it. But if you're looking at older trucks, you can't see the coolant. So these things are good. I mean, you can check all kinds of these are easy ways to just pull a sample of oil or whatever kind of fluid. It's like a little miniature turkey baster. At least an adjustable wrench, because you can check on quite a few things. I'm just thinking of like your differential, the fill plugs. You get those off. Your transmission, it could have one that you get with an adjustable wrench, or it might be it might be the female version, so you might need like a 1/2 inch ratchet with you, or breaker bar. Probably don't want to bring a breaker bar with you though. Let's say you're going to lease the truck on somewhere. Even if you plan on doing an inspection, you can use an independent shop to do an inspection for you. And one thing, so Landstar, when I leased the trailer on with them, the first thing you have to do is you have to get the equipment past a 120-day inspection. So I told the dealership...
Ryan, maybe you should set this up.
Sorry. I told the dealership that I bought this trailer from that I wanted to, before I agreed to purchase it, I wanted to take it and I wanted to have it go through a Landstar 120-day inspection. And I told them a price I was willing to pay for the trailer. I said, assuming anything that this trailer fails the inspection for, I want y'all to fix it. And I want to take it back. I want to have a clean inspection on it. And so they agreed to that, and so we were good. And as far as driving a piece of equipment on a failed inspection, that equipment is not leased on anywhere yet, so they have no authority to tell you whether you can or cannot move that equipment while it's not leased onto them. Now, federally, legally moving something on a failed inspection, well, that's up to you. You decide if you want to bend or break the laws there. But yeah, I would use that as leverage and negotiation to get them to fix things. And it depends on if you're spending $40,000 on a truck, I mean, that's got problems baked into the price. I'm assuming you're a new owner-operator and you're trying to buy a piece of equipment that you want to operate. Maybe it's not in brand new condition, but it's lightly used, so you want things to work. And when I bought this truck, I knew there was some issues with it. I planned on, spending $4,000 or $5,000 on it after I bought it. I ended up spending about 10 grand to get it road ready right after I bought it. But that was kind of part of the price. I only paid like 65 grand for it, so I knew there were some issues with it. One thing was an APU. This truck had an APU on it when I bought it, and it was listed in the listing for the truck. They had mentioned APU. They didn't say the APU worked. They didn't say it didn't work, but the APU was a selling point. If they're using the APU as a selling point, the APU needs to work. Or they need to have disclosed problems with the APU, because those are pretty expensive. I mean, I think they're $10,000 or $15,000 a piece. The APU on this truck, I threw it in the trash. It was a piece of crap. It didn't work at all. I started to tear it apart, or I did tear it apart a little bit, and it was so bad, it wasn't worth saving. So check on the APU. Check everything in the sleeper berth. Does your sleeper berth AC, does your sleeper berth heater work? The 12-volt outlets or any plugs in the sleeper berth, do they work? Do all of your gauges work? I mean, the most important gauges on your truck are going to be your oil pressure and your water temperature. You want those to work. And your oil pressure, like you see my oil pressure down there. If I turn this, it should be around 40. Yeah, so just below just under 40. That's normal. At 700 RPMs. I normally idle it a little bit higher, so it'll be up above that. And your oil pressure when you first crank the truck, it's gonna be a lot higher than that because it's cold. So do some research and figure out what normal oil pressure is for whatever engine you're going to look at. Mine, whenever I first crank it, it'll be between 65 and I've seen it as high as 80 if it's real cold outside. The lowest it'll ever be is if I pull a hill and I immediately take an exit and I'm like waiting at a stop sign or stoplight or something, and it's at idle and everything is real hot, it might be as low as 35. So that's the lowest I ever see the oil pressure in this. When you'll have to test drive the truck, but your boost pressure or manifold pressure, I mean the RPM, your speed, you want all those gauges to work. Air PSI, that's an important one. So make sure your voltage looks good, make sure that gauge works. Your fuel pressure, I'd say that's one of the more important ones. I do like to keep track of that while I'm driving. If you've got two, so you see this one has, I can look at the driver's side and then passenger side. If it's got a toggle switch like that, make sure that switch actually works. Make sure your engine brake works, and make sure, like if I cut this off, that's my engine fan. So when I turn it back on, I can hear that engine fan come on. So you want to make sure that your engine fan, if you have a manual engine fan, make sure that works. Exhaust temp, that's actually I'd say that's one of the important ones. I don't look at it a whole lot, but every now and then I do like to check and just see what my exhaust temp is running while I'm climbing. Old temp gauge, front differential, rear differential. Those are, I mean, if the gauges don't work, it's not the end of the world, but yeah, something I'd probably get fixed and get them working pretty quick. Your AC and heat up front, and make sure your vents work. So I just had to have this fixed, as my vents were stuck in this position, so I couldn't use my defroster. Windows both go up and down. Make sure if you got controls for your sleeper berth to lock it and unlock, make sure those work. And your door locks. The mirrors, make sure I don't want to move mine because they're set in the right position, but make sure you can move your mirrors in and out to adjust them. And your cruise control. And if you don't have a code reader, you can check flash codes. I'm trying to remember, let's see if I can get it. I think if I turn the cruise control off and then I hold, so I just turned the cruise off and now I'm gonna hold this in the up position. I think that might trigger the flash codes. Or, yeah, there we go. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 55. That's exactly what we want to see. 55 is a flash code that says there's no stored flash codes. So if it flashed anything other than 55, that would tell me there's a stored code, and I've got a note on my phone. I can just look up what that code is. And there should be some way to trigger that on the different engines. I didn't remember that's exactly how it worked. I just got lucky that time. I'm sure I'm going to forget something. So leave in the comments whatever I'm leaving out here. Oh, actually, before I shut the truck off, the blow-by. Check the blow-by, and you want to check the color of your exhaust smoke. You shouldn't see a bunch of smoke unless when you're first cranking the truck up. I mean, it's normal to see some smoke, but other than that, you don't want to see a whole lot of. If you got a bunch of white smoke pouring out of the exhaust pipes, that's a major problem. That's one of the deal breakers. Wouldn't buy the truck unless they're I mean, if they want $5,000 for it, maybe we could talk. That's most of the smaller things. And the key, that's one thing I forgot to mention. The key, you want to make sure you got a key to the ignition and the doors. When I bought this truck, this key worked for the ignition. I never checked in the doors. I didn't have any key for the doors, so I just always left the truck unlocked, unless I was in it. I mean, I can lock it from the inside. Just make sure all the doors open and close normally, on the cab and the sleeper, both. That's an ECM, it's like a data link for the ECM. Those are really nice. If you find a truck that's got one of those, I mean, that's a selling point. It'd be hard for me to switch and drive a truck that doesn't have that. Your differential oil and your transmission oil, I think I'd mentioned those earlier. Those should not be like a dark, filthy black color. I changed these, it was like 350 or 400,000 miles. And the shop is right across the street from here, across from this TA in Kilgore. They told me the oil looked brand new. And every time I'd check them to top it off or whatever, I mean, the oil was dang near clear or a slight amber tinge to it. So it's not normal to see real black oil in the transmission or the differentials. And a lot of them, they'll have on the fill plug, it'll have a magnet on it. So if you see chunks of metal on those, that would be a big red flag. It looks like just like some light powdery buildup. That's nothing to worry too much about. You probably want to check like your tie rod ends, your, I mean, just like you're doing an inspection, I mean, just like you're doing a more thorough pre-trip, your pivot arm, drag link, those shouldn't be deal breakers. Those are cheap to replace. I mean, you'll end up replacing them, over the lifetime of the truck anyways, just as you drive it. This steering shaft, make sure there's not too much play, but those, I mean, even if there was play in that, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, just because you've got, I mean, U-joints, you can replace those U-joints for cheap. Shocks, I wouldn't worry too much about that. If you've got a wheel chalk, or if it's set up in like a gravel yard where you can release the brakes, then you can crawl under there and check for wheel seals and just look for oil on your brakes. But again, that's a wear item that's pretty cheap to, I mean, it's cheap to fix that stuff. It's gonna be hard to look at it on this truck, but the chassis or the frame, that's a major item. So I'm assuming it'll be bobtail. So you wanna stand behind the truck and just see if there's like a major lean to one side or another. It could be an airbag, that's just one airbag is inflating more than another, or it might not be on perfectly level ground. But you don't want your first truck to have a bent frame and start off, dealing with that problem. Brake lights, turn lights, marker lights. Listen for air leaks as you're walking around the truck. So that's a pretty obvious thing. Even without crawling under the truck, you can just visually look for oil leaks underneath differentials, the transmission. You can look underneath the fuel tanks. Look for major oil leaks coming out of anywhere, any part of the engine. Like mine's got a little bit. You can see how that's kind of damp right through here. So just at the top of the valve covers, there's a little bit of oil coming out somewhere around there. And then that harness connection right there, sometimes it'll get a little damp occasionally. Power steering gearbox, I mean, one of the hoses, it's got a little bit. I mean, those aren't not major. But one thing you do want to see is you want to see grease on the grease zerks. Everywhere, there should be grease everywhere. If you get the truck and it's like, it looks brand new, like they just pressure washed everything, that could be a sign they didn't take care of it, It might not have been greased too often. Your turbo, I guess it could have a big gaping hole, but you'll be able to tell from your boost pressure and just how the truck drives whenever you test drive it. Your motor mounts, Yeah, I don't want to get the phone too close because this thing is still real hot. But you should have 4 to 6 motor mounts, so just check that those are good. And then your cab mount bushings. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know if y'all are able to see them, but check your cab mount bushings, airbags, and your tires, like the tread depth on your tires. That's a negotiating point. If they're selling it like a slightly used or almost new truck, I mean, you need a fresh set of tires. But if it's got bad tires, I just use that to try to get them to, you know, cut down on the price a little bit. You want to look at your springs. Just make sure your springs, I mean, you don't have something separated or a crack running along anything, and your wheels as well. Pitch black. I did a video talking about the truck that lost me so much money, and I mentioned that the oil was pitch black, and I had a couple mechanics comment that it's normal for diesel engines to have black oil. Yeah, it's normal for them to have a black tint to it, but if you saw the oil when I just checked it, it's got a slight black tinge, but it's still translucent. You can see through it. It's more of an amber color, really. And so if your oil looks more like black grease, like you can't see through it at all, and it's got like a, I don't know, like a sandpapery, like if it looks like there's texture to it, that's not a good thing. That might mean there's a bunch of metal shavings out down in there. Or there's just a ton of carbon, you know, been packed into that engine and they haven't done oil changes. So on to the deal breakers. I've kind of already touched on those, but oil, if I were to pull that dipstick and there was rust on the dipstick, or if the oil was like a gray, milky looking color, that would just be a deal breaker. If you pull the coolant and you see there's some kind of separation, like if it looks like there's oil in the coolant or fuel in the coolant or something in the coolant that's not supposed to be there, that'd probably be a deal breaker. Earlier I showed the exhaust. If you got a bunch of white smoke coming out of the exhaust, that'd be a deal breaker. If there's just a massive oil leak, I mean, a little bit of oil leaking here and there on an older engine, that's not the end of the world. But if there's a puddle of oil, or if there's a puddle of diesel fuel under your tanks, it depends on the price. But if you're wanting a truck that's road ready from the beginning, that'd be a deal breaker for me. If it doesn't have good oil pressure, that's another deal breaker. And that's after it's hot. So you'll have to test drive the truck and then see what the oil pressure is once it's up to its operating temperature. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier on the blow-by, but you should check the blow-by when it's hot. And I think newer trucks, I don't even know if they have like a blow-by tube or whatever that's called. I think that's like piped into some box that has a filter in it. So you might not even be able to check the blow-by. But if you are checking blow-by, the engine needs to be hot to check that, because you can crank it up. If it's cold, you might not get a true sense of what the blow-by is like in that truck. So then on to when you're test driving it. I'd mentioned earlier you want to check on the boost pressure. That's something you can't really check when you're sitting still. So you want to check on that while you're driving. The transmission, clutch, you want to make sure that stuff all feels normal. If your splitters, make sure your splitters work. So you see there's not a lot of a delay there. So when I bought this truck, I didn't even know how to shift an 18-speed. I still don't even know if I really know how to shift an 18-speed. I just kind of experimented and figured it out along the way. So I could be doing something wrong. The steering, I mean, does it have a major pull to the right or left? Does it, obviously be aware of all that stuff. It could just need an alignment or something. That may not be a big deal. If you're taller, sometimes the seats will push you too far up into the dash. I was able to just flip the bracket around to where the seat is like sitting more back towards the sleeper berth and not so much like up into the dash. And there's little brackets you can just add to fix that problem if you're taller and you need more leg room. The seats move up and down to the like lumbar supports and everything work in the seats. I forgot to mention that earlier. Big points, I would do a rig dig before you go look at anything. I would always have multiple trucks to look at. Don't just pick out a single truck. Make sure you buy the correct truck for the application. Find an engine, and that's really what you should be buying. Is you should be buying a truck for the application that you're going to use it for, and you should be buying a certain type of engine that you're comfortable with or that you're willing to deal with. And then the major red flags would be the exhaust smoke, major blow by. If the exhaust smoke, if you got some funny colors, that's not good. Oil pressure, that's a big red flag. Metal shavings, or if your oil dipstick has rust on it, or if the oil is discolored, or if your coolant is discolored, or it looks like there's some other oil or fluid, maybe diesel fuel in the coolant, that's not good. And then just major leaks. I'm sure I left multiple things out, so leave in the comments what I missed that you would check on. If you buy a semi-truck, you got to plan on spending money on it when you're using it for work. So like wheel seals and slack adjusters, brake chambers, stuff like that, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Now if you're dropping 130 or 140 grand on the truck, get them to fix it, or just walk away. If they won't take care of some small item and you're buying it from a dealership, I mean, everything needs to be working properly. And then if they're selling it to you with an APU, make sure the APU works. If you like trucking videos, or if you're a company driver about to become an owner-operator, or if you're a new owner-operator, I try to drop videos maybe once a week. Sometimes it could be every 2 weeks. But don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Thanks for watching.